As you probably know, the iPhone is a kind of magic wand. It can make phone calls, it can take pictures and movies, it can search the collective knowledge of humanity, it can educate and entertain you through podcasts, radio stations, videos, books. It can put you in touch with people everywhere on Earth through programs like Zoom and FaceTime, and on and on and on. My favorite part of it, though, see if I can find my iPhone. Oh, yeah, is right here at the bottom, where you can't see it. In fact, I'm not entirely sure that I've ever seen it myself, but it's the microphone. Because with it, I can interview people, I can ask them about themselves, and I can create their portraits in sound, not with daubs of paint, but with what they say about themselves and how they say it. Making sound portraits is something I love to do whenever I get the chance with people I know, but also with strangers that I don't know. Partly to get to know them better, but also to discover the common human everyday experiences we have that I think make us feel closer to each other, more understanding of each other and of ourselves. All you need to do to make a sound portrait, besides the microphone, is about an hour to an hour and a half of time for the interview, an application that comes with the iPhone to record the interview, and shape those 60 to 90 minutes of conversation you're going to have with the person into 5 to 6 minutes of just their voice alone. Let me give you an example. Recently, my 55th college reunion was coming up, and the only way the classmates could connect was online because of the pandemic. So I decided to catch up with them on Zoom, do some sound portraits, and then let anyone visiting our class website hear what their classmates had to say about themselves at this point in their lives. Here's one that I did with a classmate named Polly Howells.
I was extremely earnest, a very serious person, determined to get to graduate with honors. The idea of doing something hard was appealing. So I majored in Russian history and lit. I used to sit and conjugate Russian verbs and eat an apple for lunch. That was it. I mean, I was so self-depriving. I came from a very uptight Victorian, world. My parents were in the social register. We had money. My uncle, William Howells, was the professor of physical anthropology at Peabody Museum. They lived on Beacon Street. I went to my Aunt Muriel's party in the Back Bay, and I brought this guy with me. He was Japanese, Grant Ujifusa. And this is a terrible thing to say. My Aunt Muriel says, I introduced her, and she said, "Hello, Mr. Chang." Oh, God. All the men on both sides of my family had gone to Harvard. In Harvard, my father could go anywhere, he was free. But for a woman in 1962, there was no freedom. We were told to be careful, not to ride the subways at night. We couldn't go into Houghton Library. We couldn't go into the Harvard Union. I didn't say a word in a class for 4 years, completely intimidated by all the talkative men. It was probably more like 4 to 1, but it felt like 10 to 1. And then at the end of my sophomore year, my parents went into the Peace Corps to British Honduras. Father always felt like he needed to give stuff back because he didn't feel like it was fair that he had what he had. They were in their 50s. All the kids in their Peace Corps group were my age. I couldn't go into the Peace Corps because they had done it. They later told me that they went into the Peace Corps because they felt I was too attached to them. They left me in charge of, this is just so crazy, an apartment on Concord Avenue. So I was very popular among young women who wanted a place to have sex with their boyfriends. I wasn't charging. I wish I had. The way to make somebody grow up is not to leave them. If you have enough strength, you can say goodbye, but I didn't. So I was kind of like a deer in the headlights. Graduation in 1966. I didn't wear nylons. We had these long black robes on, and all the other girls had stockings on, and I spent my day looking at people's legs the whole day and feeling like I had done something wrong. This is what I was focusing on my graduation day, as opposed to some sense of accomplishment. That's how unnurtured I felt. I actually had a moment of revelation. I wrote a paper that going from child to grown up is the same process of going from primitive man to civilization. And the section woman wrote comments indicating that she didn't believe my argument. And I had to realize that I was arguing what Harvard wanted us to believe, which was that we were the pinnacle, that civilization is like the developed adult man. And I remember saying, what the fuck? What is this all about? Why are we here? The courses are terrible. We're much smarter than all the men. This is like a shocking disappointment. I came to New York, fall of '66, met my husband there. The world was opening up for women. Eric and I started a clinic in Flatbush for drug-abusing teens. And then we both trained, went to Hunter School of Social Work and became psychotherapists. The Hunter College School of Social Work experience, I felt seen, I felt heard, I felt appreciated. It's always been a pleasure for me to meet deeply people who come from a different place than I do. And that was the gift of doing therapy. You just never knew who was going to walk through the door and what cultural experiences they might have. My husband came from a very nurturing family, and his parents came to visit us when we had our first son. And his father, Bernard, said, well, all you got to do is love him. Coming from generations of women who were pretty cold, I remember feeling, I don't know how to do that. The first time I soothed my first son, he fell asleep in my arms after I nursed him, and I'm like, I can do this. It was really like a revelation. I don't really believe in God, but there is magic in the world. I am blessedly healthy. I haven't had anything life-threatening. My sister, the comparison is just hugely painful. She's now 82, she is failing, and she's got a son who needs care, and it's a mess, and very, very sad. But over the years I've come to realize that she's needed me in terms of nurturing as much as I needed her. That's what we call complicated grief, isn't it? Much more complicated than simple, I loved the person, goodbye. I mean, that's really why I became a therapist, if you want to know the truth, trying to heal my own family. But I don't think a lot about my own death because I feel, this could change tomorrow. I feel like pretty much the way I've always felt. I can walk, I can climb hills, I can think, more or less. Eric just turned 80. He's in good shape too. He has a little more pain in his back than I do, but Eric always thinks he's going to go first, and you never know. I've had a good life, no, absolutely, and it's not just luck. I've had something to do with it. Yeah, I guess it's kind of incremental. So I feel very lucky. I'm happy. Did I say that?
If you want to try making a sound portrait of someone for yourself, here are a couple of tips. Take the time to warm up with your subject first and make them feel comfortable. Here, of course, small talk is just fine. Find a quiet place to record. Make sure you get a good sound that isn't interrupted by a passing ambulance or, your dog going to pieces in the background. Now, sometimes to get an even better sound, the microphone on the iPhone is good enough. I'll use a small external microphone that I've bought that I'll attach to the brim of a baseball cap that they can wear. Something like this. Now, it looks silly, but it actually relaxes people. It lets them talk and move freely without worrying about keeping the proper distance from the microphone. Once you get familiar, get them to talk about what's really going on with them. Think of it as if they're taking you for a stroll through their private woods. When they point out something that maybe they don't even think about, but that really interests you, then ask them to bring you in for a closer look. Let me give you an example. Once I remember, someone while talking about her childhood home happened to mention, purely in passing, along with all the other furniture she grew up with, her grandmother's big red couch. Well, that image hit me like a stop sign. Her grandmother's big red couch. Ooh, what happened there? Tell me more. It takes practice, but basically you're listening for the things they say that grab your attention and ignite your curiosity based upon your own life experience. In that sense, you're not just listening to them, you're listening to yourself, to that special something that touches you as a fellow human being. And there are a lot of things to listen for that may indicate that something like that's coming up. And maybe a phrase like, I just remembered this, or I never mentioned this before, but, or maybe it could be signaled by a change in their tone of voice or a sudden show of emotion. All of these things are often signs that there's more waiting behind them to be told. Now think of these moments as scattered pieces of a mosaic, something that may or may not have a very clear storyline to it at that point. But once you feel you have enough of them to work with, and you get better at that with practice, then it's time to put the mosaic together. And this is the fun part. The key word here is patience. Now, it may take me a week of editing, listening and re-listening, paring down what they said, rearranging the pieces. It may involve adding things that weren't even there to begin with, like pauses or silences. Think of it. There's a huge difference between saying, I loved her, and I loved her. That pause gives you, the listener, more time to absorb the impact on you of what they may be saying, of reading between the lines. Remember, this isn't investigative journalism. What you're doing is just collaborating with someone to pull together, in their words, a personal story that you heard them tell you. Editing also allows you to add extra features if you'd like to enhance the mood or change the tempo, like sound effects or music. Here's the piece I did about my cleaning lady, Fatima, a young mother of 2 daughters from Brazil. I thought she might talk about what it was like to have to clean other people's homes for a living, so far from her own home.
When I was 7 years old, my mom was killed, and I saw it. I never met my father. And so, after that, my relatives take care of me, but not like a daughter, but as a servant girl. That's why I know how to clean. But something inside of me always tells me to go on, never give up. When I was 18 years old, I get married and we have our children. And when they start to grow, I was like, oh my God, what can I give to them living here in Brazil? They are going to be just like me. They are not going to get a good education to help people and have the opportunity to move on in the world. That's when we decide to come to America. When we arrived here, we work really hard, really hard. My husband helps me clean house. He delivers papers, and he works delivering pizza. But we are illegal. If you are illegal, you are not able to drive. You can have a job, but you can spend money. And there aren't any door open. I feel invisible to the world. In my eyes, I think that Americans, they live like, how I say, they create a wall. You cannot see inside. Like if you talk to me, you can see my face. And also, you can see a little bit of me. And I cannot see in you. They don't let you in. And it's so sad. It happened a lot, you know? Like when Americans get older, I've seen a lot of them at the nursing home, and it breaks my heart. They feel lonely. They work hard their whole entire life. Sometimes they don't even have time to see what means a family. To be together around the table, having dinner, or doing nothing but be together. And then they will spend the rest of their lives in a nursing home with nursings that they have never met. It's, oh my God. I'm working now for my kids. Mitali, she's 12 years old, and I think that she don't think like a 12 years old girl. She is really smart. She studied at East Somerville. For some people, the school of Somerville is not good, but for them, it's excellent. Excellent because in Brazil, they don't have what they have in here, you know? And she's doing really, really well. After September 11, if a policeman stops me and they see that I'm not legal, they can handcuff me and my husband as if we are a criminal. Imagine how my kids will feel. Oh my God. And I know a lot of immigrants that are really concerned. It's really hard for you live in a place that are saying, I'm not legal here. I'm doing something wrong. This feeling, if you are a person who wants to do things right, kills yourself. If I could stay and study a career, I probably will study something to work with kids. Because if I'm a good mother, if I know how to raise my children, healthy, with good feelings, walking at the bright side, I think I could help a lot of kids too. And I could do a really good job. Not just because of the money, but because you are helping someone when they need. And I know what means need something and get it. And even now, like in my case, we are thinking about go back. Be more close with people, more human warm. Yeah, I think we feel more it. I think so. I miss it. Human warm. I love it. I love it. Just love it.
Using my iPhone for sound portraits has been a way for me to experience other lives in a way that can enrich my own. I sometimes say it's like taking a ride on someone else's soul. You know, I once asked someone, what would make the world a more peaceful place for at least a week? She replied, something that for at least 3 days in a row would make us feel what it's like to be the other guy. I agree completely. So making sound portraits is not just an art form for me, but my small peace initiative for the planet. Kid's going to provide you with links to other portraits I've done you're welcome to listen to, and some general information on editing sound. And since the iPhone is very much a two-way street, if you do make some sound portraits of your own, I'd love to hear what you come up with. And you can reach me at TonyKhan@gmail.com. So, good luck, and keep in touch, and keep listening, okay?